welcome to a deep dive. It might actually totally rewire how you think about Stoicism. You've asked to explore Justus Lipsius. He was like a 16th century scholar. He's often called the father of Neo-Stoicism. But he is so much more than just some historical footnote. He grappled with questions that, any philosopher today would find super fascinating. Like, how do you reconcile, ancient wisdom with modern faith? Or can virtue really thrive in a world that's totally ripped apart by conflict?
Yeah.
Our guide through all of this is our expert. He's ready to unpack the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy's take on this super complex figure.
All right. So, what's immediately captivating about Lipsius is that he wasn't just an academic, right?
Yeah.
Imagine Europe in the 1500s.
Oh, wow.
It was religious wars, political upheaval, constant uncertainty.
Yeah.
He lived through it all, and his philosophy was forged in that fire.
His life story reads like a philosophy syllabus in itself.
Right.
Born Catholic, educated by Jesuits, worked for a cardinal. Then shifts to Lutheranism, then Calvinism, and ultimately back to Catholicism.
Yeah.
How do we even start to understand those turns?
That's where things get philosophically intriguing. Was he genuinely searching for truth? Or were these shifts tied to career moves as he held positions at different universities?
Oh, interesting.
We can't know for sure.
Right.
But it forces us to ask, how much does personal experience shape even the most rigorous philosophical system?
Especially when that system is trying to bridge something as seemingly disparate as Stoicism and Christianity, right?
Right.
That's Lipsius's big project.
Exactly. And his most famous work, De Constantia, that's where it all comes together. He wrote this during the height of the religious wars, and he's offering constancy as this essential virtue for survival.
Oh, wow.
Imagine trying to find inner peace while the world around you is literally burning.
Yeah.
That's what Lipsius was responding to.
So how does he define constancy for a philosopher grappling with those existential stakes?
He draws heavily on Seneca. He advocates for acceptance of God's will and mastering one's emotions through reason.
Okay.
He even coined the term divine clades, which means divinely sanctioned disasters, earthquakes, plagues, even war, all part of God's plan.
Oh, wow.
It's not about passive resignation. It's rather a recognition of what's outside our control and finding strength within.
That almost sounds like a proto-cognitive behavioral therapy approach, reframing how we view hardship.
It's remarkable how much resonance his ideas have with modern psychology.
Yeah.
But Lipsius was also wrestling with this core philosophical tension. How do you square Stoic ideas about fate with the Christian concept of free will?
That's a question any philosophy student today would wrestle with. What was his solution?
Lipsius argues that true freedom lies in obedience to God, so that by aligning ourselves with the divine will, we achieve a higher form of liberty. It's a complex argument, but it highlights his effort to weave together seemingly incompatible threads of Stoicism and Christianity.
But it's in his Politica, his guide for rulers, where things get really spicy, right? Especially for those of us thinking about ethics in a political context.
Absolutely. Politica draws heavily on Tacitus, offering practical advice on governance. And it's fascinating because Lipsius openly admired Machiavelli's pragmatism but criticized his amorality.
Oh.
So he was trying to create a system that was both effective and ethical.
Okay.
But that's where the controversy comes in.
Because he advocated for religious intolerance. That doesn't sound very ethical to modern ears.
It's his most controversial argument, and it forces us to confront a timeless philosophical dilemma. Is unity, even if achieved through suppressing dissent, worth the cost? Lipsius, living through those brutal religious wars, he clearly felt it was.
It's a chilling reminder that even brilliant minds can reach conclusions we now find abhorrent. But it also sparks a vital conversation. Are there any circumstances where curtailing individual freedom for the sake of stability is justifiable? A question that haunts us even today.
Precisely. And before we judge Lipsius too harshly, we need to remember he wasn't operating in a vacuum, right?
Right.
His ideas were shaped by the tumultuous world that he lived in.
So we have Lipsius, the scholar seeking to reconcile ancient philosophy with Christian doctrine, the pragmatist advising rulers on power, and the controversial figure pushing us to examine the limits of tolerance.
And we haven't even touched on his later Stoic writings, where he really digs deep into systematizing the philosophy for a modern audience.
Which is exactly where we're headed next. Get ready to unpack the Manuductio ad Stoicum Philosophiam and the Physiologia Stoicorum. This deep dive is just getting started.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back and ready to kind of tackle Lipsius's later works, the Manuductio ad Stoicum Philosophiam and the Physiologia Stoicorum. These sound like they're like taking us deep into the heart of Stoicism. What's the context here? Why did he write these?
Well, picture this. Lipsius is working on this massive edition of Seneca's philosophical works. It's like his true passion project. But he's also, grappling with declining health.
Oh, wow.
He knows he might not have time to finish everything.
Yeah, the classic scholar's dilemma.
Yeah.
So much knowledge to share, so little time.
Exactly. So he decides to publish these treatises first, ensuring his interpretation of Stoicism reaches the world. And for any philosopher today, these works are like gold mines.
Okay, so let's start with the Manuductio, this user's guide to Stoicism, like you called it. Is he just compiling quotes, or is there something more going on?
Lipsius was a master synthesizer. He pulls from all the greats, Seneca, Epictetus, Cicero, but he's not just summarizing.
Right.
He's dissecting, analyzing, and ultimately systematizing Stoic doctrines into this coherent whole. And to make it even more interesting, he's doing it through this distinctly Christian lens.
Christianized Stoicism that's like a heady brew. Where do we see this fusion most clearly?
Take the Stoic concept of the summum bonum, the highest good. Stoics believe that virtue was the sole good, right?
Yeah.
But Lipsius adds this layer of theological interpretation.
Right.
Living virtuously is about aligning yourself with God's will. It's not just about individual ethics. It's about participating in this divine order.
So he's finding a way to bridge that gap between ancient ethics and Christian belief. I imagine there were some points of friction along the way.
Absolutely. The Manuductio is full of these fascinating tensions.
Yeah.
He embraces Stoic ideas about reason and self-control, but completely rejects their views on suicide. That obviously clashed with Christian teachings.
He's walking a philosophical tightrope, trying to stay true to the spirit of Stoicism while making it palatable for a Christian audience. A challenge many philosophers have faced when trying to integrate different schools of thought.
Precisely. But what's remarkable is that he's not just cherry-picking convenient ideas.
Right.
He's wrestling with Stoicism on its own terms, seeking genuine points of connection with Christian doctrine. It's like this dialogue across centuries, a true meeting of the minds.
Okay, so the Manuductio lays out this Christianized Stoic ethics.
Yeah.
But then we have the Physiologia Stoicorum, this exploration of Stoic physics. Why was that important for Lipsius?
This is where it gets really interesting for a philosopher. Lipsius argues that you can't truly grasp Stoic ethics without understanding their physics.
Okay.
Their view of the cosmos, how the universe works, directly informs their ethical principles.
So it's not just about individual actions, but about our place within this grand interconnected order.
Exactly. And this is where we encounter some heady concepts. The Stoic logos, their beliefs in fate and providence, the nature of the soul. Lipsius delves into all these intricate details, like the craftsman-like fire that shapes the world.
A craftsman-like fire. That sounds almost mythical.
It does, but it's central to Stoic physics. They believe that this divine fire permeated the universe, shaping and ordering everything. Lipsius tries to connect this to Christian notions of God and creation, again, bridging those philosophical worlds.
But what about the Stoic idea of determinism? Everything is predetermined by fate. How did Lipsius reconcile that with the Christian emphasis on free will? That seems like a major philosophical hurdle.
He tackles this head-on, arguing that while fate governs the universe, humans still have free will within the realm of what he called secondary causes. Think of it like this. God might set the stage, but we still have the freedom to choose our actions within that framework.
So our choices matter even within a preordained universe. It's a nuanced position and one that reflects the complexity of Lipsius's thought.
And remember, he's doing all of this amidst the chaos of 16th century Europe.
Oh, wow.
He's not just theorizing. He's applying these ideas to the real world, seeking solutions for a society in turmoil. This wasn't just philosophy for Lipsius. It was a way of life.
It makes his work that much more compelling for us today, doesn't it? We're not just studying abstract concepts. We're engaging with a thinker who grappled with these life and death questions in a world not so different from our own.
And that brings us to the question that every philosopher encountering Lipsius has to wrestle with. Does his system, this Christianized Neo-Stoicism, hold up to scrutiny in the modern world? Can it offer us anything of value today?
That's the million-dollar question, and I think we need to explore it further. Let's delve into those implications and see what Lipsius has to offer us centuries after he penned these groundbreaking works.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing to think about Lipsius taking these ancient Stoic ideas and like wrestling with them, trying to make them relevant for his own, time and place. And it's striking, how much his work anticipates philosophical debates we're still having, today.
Yeah.
Reconciling, faith and reason, finding meaning in a world that feels chaotic. It's like he's speaking, directly to our like modern anxieties.
You've hit the nail on the head. And what's even more impressive is how Lipsius's work resonated, not just with his contemporaries, but with thinkers for centuries to come.
His treatises on Stoicism became essential reading, shaping the minds of philosophers like Spinoza, Descartes, and even Locke.
Wow.
It's like he built this philosophical bridge between the ancient world and the dawn of modernity.
Talk about a lasting impact.
Mm.
But his influence, it went like beyond the realm of just, philosophy, right?
Yeah.
I heard there's even like an art history connection with Lipsius.
Absolutely. You can't discuss Lipsius without mentioning the Flemish painter Peter Paul Rubens. Rubens actually immortalized Lipsius in his painting The Four Philosophers right alongside, other leading intellectuals of the era.
Wow. A philosopher like deemed worthy of being painted by Rubens. That's high praise indeed.
It certainly is, and the connection goes deeper than just like portraiture.
Yeah.
Rubens was profoundly influenced by Lipsius's Stoicism, particularly the themes of constancy and virtue.
Yeah.
Some scholars even suggest that Rubens's fast depiction of the dying Seneca reflects Lipsius's own interpretation of Stoic philosophy.
So we're talking about a philosophical legacy that transcends the written word and finds expression in visual art. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It speaks to the power of Lipsius's ideas, like to capture the imagination and inspire creativity in, unexpected ways.
Precisely. And it brings us back to like the big question we posed earlier. Does Lipsius's system, this blend of Christianity and Stoicism, actually hold water philosophically in the modern world?
Right. Can we as like modern thinkers still find value in this Christianized Neo-Stoicism?
It's a tough one.
There are definitely elements that feel problematic today, like, his stance on religious intolerance, for example.
Right.
That clashes with, contemporary values of individual freedom and pluralism.
That's a valid point. It's a stark reminder that even brilliant minds can hold views we now find unacceptable. But perhaps that's, part of the value of engaging with historical figures like Lipsius. It forces us to confront those like uncomfortable truths and grapple with how philosophical ideas evolve over time.
So it's not about blindly accepting everything Lipsius said, but rather like using his work as a springboard for, critical reflection.
Yeah.
Are there aspects of his thought that still like resonate with us today, despite those problematic elements?
Absolutely. I think Lipsius's emphasis on constancy, on cultivating inner strength in the face of adversity, speaks directly to the challenges, we face in the modern world. Think about the anxieties of our time: political polarization, climate change, economic uncertainty.
Right.
Lipsius reminds us that we can't always control external events, but we can control our reactions to them.
It's that idea of finding like a sense of inner peace and stability amidst the chaos that feels incredibly relevant today, even if we don't, subscribe to all of his like theological underpinnings.
Exactly. And his focus on virtue, on building a strong ethical character that transcends, any specific historical context. It's a timeless message that resonates with philosophers, of all stripes.
So maybe the true legacy of Lipsius isn't so much like a rigid philosophical system, but rather, a set of enduring questions and a way of approaching life with both, intellectual rigor and practical wisdom. He compels us to like think deeply about the interplay of, faith and reason, the role of virtue in like public life, and, how to find purpose in a world that often feels like it's spinning out of control.
That's beautifully put. Lipsius offers us not just like answers, but, a framework for asking better questions that challenge us to grow, as individuals and as a society.
And on that note, we come to the end of our deep dive into the fascinating world of Justus Lipsius, a scholar, a humanist, a philosopher who wrestled with the biggest questions of his age, and in doing so, offered us, timeless insights that continue to provoke and inspire.
If you're eager to explore further, I highly recommend checking out the Internet Encyclopedia philosophy entries on Lipsius and Neo-Stoicism. There are also several, excellent scholarly works that, delve into his life and thought in greater detail.
And who knows, maybe Lipsius's quest to reconcile ancient wisdom with, modern challenges will inspire you to embark on your own philosophical journey. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life and work of Justus Lipsius. Until next time.